changed. 10-2. With lunch.
With lunch.
That's kind of how he is. That's the key. Another one. Entire year. That's a good, that's not long. That was they came to the school. Don't let us do it. Yeah.
I'm growing. I grew into insurance, now I'm starting to grow out.
January 4th special meeting of Amherst City Council will come to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Janik.
Here.
Mr. Bukovac.
Here.
Mr. Goodell.
Here.
Mr. Van Churen.
Here.
Mrs. Wasilk. Here. Mr. Winarski.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Present.
We'll stand for the prayer by Chapel of Silk and remain standing for the pledge of the flag by Sergeant Arms Bukovac.
Will you bow with me, please? Gracious God, bless this meeting and all who attend here tonight. Keep your guarding hand over all those who are returning and bless them and guide them. Continue to guide and inspire our President of Council, John Dietrich, as he leads this legislative body. We pray a special blessing upon our new mayor, Mark Costello, and his Safety Services Director, John Jeffries. Keep them ever mindful of what is good and what you require, to be kind and merciful, to be just, and to walk humbly in your presence. And now may the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Move on to item 4, appointment of the Clerk of Council. Mr. Pasilk,
I nominate Mrs. Linda Turley.
Mr. Miller.
Second, please.
Motion is second on the floor to appoint Mrs. Lynn Turley as Clerk of Council. Any other nominations? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Janik.
Yes.
Mr. Bukovac.
Yes.
Mr. Goodell.
Yes.
Mr. Van Churen.
Yes.
Mrs. Wasilk.
Yes.
Mr. Winarski.
Yeah.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Move on to item 5, adoption of council rules. Ms. Pasilk.
I move that we adopt the current council rules.
Mr. Goodell.
Second.
Motion is second on the floor to adopt the council rules as they are now present. Anyone got any questions on that? If not, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Janik.
Yes.
Mr. Bukovac.
Yes.
Mr. Goodell.
Yes.
Mr. Van Churen.
Yes.
Mrs. Wasilk.
Yes.
Mr. Winarski.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Motion carries. Move on to item 6, appointment of Council President Council Pro Tem. Mr. Janik.
I'd like to nominate Steve Bukovac.
Mr. Miller.
Second, please.
Motion is second on the floor to nominate Mr. Steve Bukovac. Are there any other nominations? Mr. Winarski.
I'd recommend Mrs. Wasilk.
Mr. Van Churen.
Second.
Motion is second on the floor to nominate Mr. Silk. We'll have the first, is there any other nominations, by the way? Okay, first vote will be on Mr. Bukovac. Roll call vote, yea or nay?
Mr. Janik.
Yes.
Mr. Bukovac.
Yes.
Mr. Goodell.
No.
Mr. Van Churen.
No.
Mrs. Wasilk.
No.
Mr. Winarski.
No.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Motion fails 3-4. So next vote will be on Mrs. Vasil. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Janik.
No.
Mr. Bukovac.
No.
Mr. Goodell.
Yes.
Mr. Van Churen.
Yes.
Mrs. Wasilk.
Yes.
Mr. Winarski.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
No.
Okay. Motion carries 4-3. Congratulations, Mr. Vasil. That completes item 6. We'll move on to item 7, committee council assignments. Linda, would you like to take care of that for me?
You want me to read them?
Yeah.
If I could borrow your paper.
Oh. Sorry about that.
Finance will be Mrs. Wasilk with Mr. Bukovac as vice. Building and Lands is Mr. Janik with Mr. Van Churen as vice. Streets, Mr. Bukovac with vice being Mr. Janik. Community Development, Mr. Goodell with Mr. Bukovac as vice. Executive is Mr. Van Churen with Mrs. Wasilk as vice. Ordinance, Mr. Miller with Mr. Janik as vice. Utilities, Mr. Janik with Mr. Van Churen as vice. Recycle, Mr. Miller with Mr. Goodell as vice. Technology, Mr. Bukovac with Mr. Winarski being vice. Police and Fire, Mr. Winarski with Mr. Miller being vice. Annexation, Mr. Miller with Mr. Winarski being vice. And that's complete.
Okay, that completes item 7. We'll move on to item 8, miscellaneous acknowledgement of the public pertaining to items. Well, we have nothing on tonight's agenda, but anyone would like to speak on anything? If not, we'll move on to item 9.
Excuse me, Mr. President, we have
Oh.
a hand over there.
I didn't need to draw that much attention to it, but I just want to say it's probably a good thing that I'm now down here, given that every time we do the Pledge of Allegiance, I don't think the council member, the members of the administration could see past me. So, it's probably a good thing.
Well, thank you, Mr. Ramsey.
That's why I got moved back here.
Well, that was one of the reasons, but Mr. Miller?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to welcome again our returning council, returning administration, and welcome our new mayor and new service director, Mr. Costello and Mr. Jeffries. Look forward to 2 years of seeing Amherst grow and prosper. So, look forward to it. That's it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, we'll move on to item 9, committee meeting schedules.
I have two agenda requests. The first is A16-01, and it's an ordinance to approve current replacement pages to the Amherst codified ordinances and declaring an emergency, and that will go to the ordinance committee. The second is for Building and Lands, and it's A-16-02, and it's approval of subdividers agreement and record plat for North Point Estates, subdivision 4, and that is complete.
Thank you. Finance, Mr. Sill?
Nothing, Mr. President, canceled.
Thank you. Building and Lands, Mr. Janik?
I have one request, Mr. President, A-16-02, the approval of subdividers agreement and record plat for North Point Estates subdivision 4.
Is that complete, Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Thank you. Streets, Mr. Bukovac?
There are no items, please cancel.
Thank you. Community Development, Mr. Goodell?
Nothing at this time, Mr. President. Please cancel.
Thank you. Executive, Mr. Van Churen?
Nothing at this time, please cancel, Mr. President.
Thank you. Ordinance, Mr. Miller?
Yes, Mr. President, I have one item, A16-01, an ordinance to approve current replacement pages to the Amherst codified ordinance and declaring an emergency. I'd like to set that time for 7 o'clock or 7:05, depending on how Mr. Janik.
Miller should probably be first, right? Because that's just the codified ordinance.
Yeah.
I need the date.
What time did you call for?
January 18th at, Mr. Janik will be at January 18th at 7 o'clock.
Okay, if you,
Yours
then I'll
will
be
be
at 7:05.
Yes.
And then, just a side note, we're currently bringing in the ordinance for signs. That should be showing up here over the next 2 weeks. And I believe we'll be putting something in your boxes, and we'll be calling upon that once it's assigned a commit or a agenda legislative request number. That is it, Mr. President.
Thank you. Where'd we leave off? Ordinance. Utilities, Mr. Janik.
No items, Mr. President, please cancel.
Thank you. Recycle, Mr. Miller.
No items, please cancel.
Technology, Mr. Bukovac.
There are no items, please cancel.
Thank you. Police and Fire, Mr. Winarski.
Nothing at this time.
Thank you. Annexation, Mr. Miller.
No items at this time, please cancel.
That completes item 9. Moving on to item 10, adjournment. Mr. Van Churen.
Move to adjourn.
Mr. Goodell.
Second.
Motion is second on the floor to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We are adjourned at 7:26. See you on the 18th.